We begin in Kenya, where China has officially handed over the standard gauge railway to Kenya. President Uhuru Kenyatta has been joined at the Port of Mombasa by dozens of top officials from the Chinese companies that helped build and fund the railway project. The handover ceremony included traditional dancing and singing to mark this momentous occasion. The railway will eventually link up to the entire East African region. It's been called a potential game changer for Kenya and the region. President Kenyatta is due to leave from the Mombasa station on Wednesday morning to take the inaugural train to Nairobi. Our team is in Mombasa and has been getting us more on the SGR, the projects that go with it, and the potential benefits. Here's Ramah Nyang with more.
Right then, now we've covered the cost of the investment so far. To date, Kenya has borrowed at least $7.3 billion, and a lot of that, visibly anyway, has gone into hardware, pretty much like this. The locomotives that will be hauling cargo from Mombasa up to Nairobi and, of course, back. But there's another component of that investment that perhaps isn't as visible, the investment in people. 8 female train drivers have been trained as part of this entire project in China. 4 of them will be on the train, which the president will be taking from Mombasa on the 31st of May. Maria Galang spoke to one of them.
My name is Elizabeth Nekesa Wanjala and I'm 24 years old. I got this opportunity through a career fair organized by the University of Nairobi. That was last year, November, where the China Road and Bridge Corporation Company came to the university. I attended the career fair just like other students. And lucky enough, I got this opportunity to be a train driver, and I was willing to do it with all my heart. I was learning Chinese initially, so I don't know the criteria they used. I feel like they wanted somebody who had a passion, willing to learn, because I believe you can learn anything if you have the passion to learn. So we went to China from January to March, and the training was so intense. I remember the first 3 weeks, we were taken through the theory part, the theoretical part about the locomotive. Then after that, we did a lot of practical training, internship training on the field. It was so intense, but it was a good experience. We learned a lot, and we are 8 ladies in total, and I'm one of them. I am so proud to be part of this launch because it's a very big, it's actually in the history, in the Kenyan history, it will be in the Kenyan history for women drivers to be launching this project. My hope is to see a success of this project in the next. I want to grow old and see that these trains are still running. I want in my 90s, I can board this train and say I was part of it when they were launching. So I hope that this project will be a success and every Kenyan can embrace it. Jauda jaga gongzo wo fechang ganshe wo menda laushi Nairobi dashwe da laushi jaga gongse da laushi wo fechang shihwan wo da gongzo.
This entire project is basically a multi-billion-dollar bet on the future of the Kenyan economy. But when you're spending that kind of money, what sort of economic benefits, what sort of economic return are you really getting for all the cash you're spending? Here's CGTN's Catherine Awanzo with some answers.
Kenya is East and Central Africa's key trade gateway. However, with outdated infrastructure, the East African nation could easily lose this advantage of linking several countries to the world and the world to Africa by sea.
It is absolutely necessary that Kenya upgraded its infrastructure, and one of the key ones is the railway, and that's where we've got to look at that railway. You know, it feels like a repeat a century later, the Lunatic Express and all that, but you know, it's still there to do a fundamental purpose. Take Kenya's goods to global markets, take neighboring countries' goods to global markets, bring goods into this region and distribute it, and of course make a profit.
The standard gauge railway is the country's biggest project since independence. The first phase, which runs from Mombasa to Nairobi, costs about $3.8 billion. There has been massive criticism against the Kenyan government. The question on many Kenyan taxpayers' minds is, was the project worth it? According to economist Ali Khan Sachu, it is after the service is launched that Kenyans will experience the benefits of the new railway.
The ingredients for manufacturing, and this is the perennial worry about African policymakers and governments. We've deindustrialized Africa. We're not making anything. And what are the ingredients for industrialization? The ingredients are essentially cheap transport, access to global markets, cheap power. I think the railway fits into that. What Kenya is hoping is that the railway will provide very cheap access, transport access. Boom, you're in Mombasa, Indian Ocean, 3 billion people, global market, 7 billion. And cheaply. You're not going to be wasting your time and money or getting stuck on the roads.
Those who have so far benefited from the new railway are those currently working on the project. Winnie Ngeto is among the 30,000 Kenyans who have been employed by the project since it began in late 2013. For the train attendant, SGR is a lifeline.
There are great employment opportunities. We were trained at the Railway Institute in Nairobi, and we encourage Kenyans to come and see the train.
Those who do use the train get to see some of the breathtaking scenery Kenya has to offer. The second phase of the railway line is expected to be completed by December 2017. Catherine Omwando, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
When the original plans to build an entirely new rail line were announced, and especially once its route was being decided on, there was a lot of concern about exactly where it would pass, because those places right now are fairly close or passing directly through a whole bunch of wildlife sanctuaries. Tsavo East, Tsavo West is one example, and of course the Nairobi National Park as well. So how do you balance between the need for a more efficient logistical corridor to actually move cargo in and out of the country versus at the same time maintaining the sanctity of the environment in which this cargo corridor will pass through? Here's Clementine Logan with more.
Last year, Kenya Railways signed an agreement with the Kenya Wildlife Service and National Land Commission to realign part of the standard gauge railway's path through Nairobi National Park. The SGR will crisscross some of East Africa's most scenic landscapes. This also includes Tsavo West National Park, where the China Road and Bridge Corporation has built 6 wildlife crossings. The underpasses were constructed with input from conservation organisations. Some elephants use them, but others struggle to cross over to other ecosystems. Environmentalists say maintaining connectivity between them is key. Some say the railway will disturb ecosystems and sets a precedent for development inside the country's national parks. Plans for the SGR to cut across Nairobi National Park sparked protests.
Kenya Railways and its consultants, though, say it's the most viable option and that steps have been taken to minimise any disruption to wildlife.
What was discovered from analysing all these 7 routes was, in fact, each and every one of them had an effect on the Nairobi National Park. Going around it would in fact exercise a lot more land from the park. We're not actually going through the park, we're going above the park. So these piers of the bridge will be buried so deep inside that actually helps deflect the noise of a moving train. And on top of that, these piers, the span in between each pier will be approximately 32 meters, which is plenty of movement for free movement for animals, water, tourists. And this bridge is in the least distance possible, which is approximately 6.2 kilometers across the park.
The multi-billion-dollar railway is designed to carry several million tons of cargo each year by 2035. The Kenyan government says it will boost the local and regional economy. Clementine Logan, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
For a couple of years now, in order to partially fund the construction of this standard gauge rail line, Kenyans have had to put up with a new tax, the Rail Development Levy. It applies at a rate of 1.5% on pretty much any imported goods for domestic use. But now that the first phase of this entire project is just so close to getting up and running, what do Kenyans expect to see in terms of value for their money? CGTN's Robin Degila went to find out on the streets of Nairobi.
It's the largest infrastructural project undertaken by Kenya since independence in 1963. The first phase, linking the port city of Mombasa to the capital Nairobi at a cost of $4 billion, is complete. So just how are Kenyans receiving it? We hit the streets of Kenya's capital Nairobi to find out.
It's good for the government It's a good progress for the country, for Kenya. We don't have such infrastructure for now, and it will be a good thing for the country.
It is a very welcome project. I think finally the traffic congestion in Nairobi will be finished, because I think most people now will be using the standard gauge railway, and going to Mombasa, I think now will be much more easier.
For many ordinary Kenyans, the low cost of travel and the short amount of time it will take to travel between towns is something worth looking forward to.
Transport will be very fast, investors will be happy, and going to Mombasa will be faster than using a bus.
It will help Kenyans in terms of transport and reducing the traffic congestion that is along Mombasa Road. Despite the cost that has been used to build it, but economically and transport-wise it's good.
The second phase of the project, set to begin later this year, will link the capital Nairobi and the Kenyan border with Uganda. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
So we've been talking quite a bit about this 500 kilometers or so of rail line that has been completed so far, but it is just a small part of a much bigger puzzle of rail and port links across East Africa. The connections to be made to Uganda. There's a $7 billion link that will go all the way to Ethiopia and connect to that country's standard gauge rail line, which interestingly will give us access to the port of Djibouti, and that's an interesting scenario altogether. The question ultimately, though, that a lot of Kenyan taxpayers perhaps will have at the end of the day is, for $14 billion and perhaps more, if you include the cost of building the Lamu port, is it really worth it? Will it deliver the benefits that have been touted for this entire project from end to end? We'll have some answers for you on that, of course, as the story develops. For now, though, I'm Ramah Nyang in Mombasa. Back to you.